In this video, I'm going to show you how to add and subtract integers using colored counters, and that is going to lead us to our rules for adding and subtracting integers. But the first thing I need you to understand before we go into that is that I need you to understand that opposites, when we combine opposites, that makes 0. In other words, if I have a -1 and I combine that with a +1, a -1 and a +1 make 0. Okay, so always when we combine opposites, it's going to come out to be 0. So that goes for any number. So -4 and its opposite would be +4, that's going to make 0. -10 and +10 is going to make 0. Okay, so opposites always zero out. It's like you're taking 10 and giving 10. Your net change is 0. If you subtract 4 and you add 4, one of these undoes the other and your net change is 0. So opposites are always going to make 0 when we're combining integers. Alright, so that's the first thing you have to understand. And so now we can move on to using some of these colored counters to do some other types of problems. So let's look at, for example, -2 plus 6. When you see this problem, I don't want you to so much focus on whether that's adding or subtracting. I want you to focus on these signs as the signs of the numbers that they're in front of. So when you see this, I want you to think -2, and when you see this, I want you to think +6. So we have a -2 and a +6. Our red counters are going to represent our negative numbers. So since we have -2, I'm going to put 2 red counters. Our yellows are going to be positive. So since we have +6, I'm going to put 6 yellow counters. Okay, so I'm going to line them up like this. We have a -2 and we have +6. Now remember, I just talked about how if you have a -1 and a +1, those make 0. So when you have a pair like this, that pair, they zero each other out. Those are gone. There's another pair. Those are gone. So we want to think of those as being gone, and what's left? We have 4 yellows left. The yellows are positive, so that means our answer is +4, because that's what would be left after these opposites zero each other out. Okay, these -2 right here are wiped out by these +2, and we have +4 left. Okay, let's do another one. Okay, what if we have -7 plus 2? Okay, so again, I want you to view these as signs for the numbers that they're in front of. So this is a -7 and this is a +2. All right, that's what we're going to build with our counters. We're going to build a -7, so we need 7 red counters because reds are negative. Okay, there's -7. Then we need +2, so we need 2 yellow counters to represent +2. And then we know that any pair like this zeroes out. This is a -1 and a +1, that makes 0. -1 and +1, that makes 0. So all that's gone. And what do we have left? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 reds, which is -5. Okay. All right. Let's do a few more. On this next one, you've got to remember that when you have minus a negative, anytime you see minus a negative, you're going to change that to plus. Minus a negative is the same as plus. Alright, so once you do that, that's always the first thing you do. If you see minus a negative, change it to plus. And now you can investigate what numbers we're combining here. We're combining a -4 and a +2. Okay, so -4 would be 4 red chips. +2 would be 2 yellow chips. All right, the pairs zero out, and we'll be left with 2 reds, and those are negative, so that's -2. So a -4 and a +2 makes -2. All right. All right, next, let's say 3 minus 9. But again, I don't want you to focus on it as minus. I want you to think of this as we're combining a +3. If there's no number in front, no sign in front of it, excuse me, then it's positive, a +3 and a -9. All right. So a +3, those are your yellows. We have 3 yellow chips, and a -9, so we need to build -9 out of red. I'll move some of these. All right, I believe that's 9. Okay, these are going to zero out. These pairs are going to zero out, and so what we're going to have left is we're going to have 6 reds. That means our answer is -6. Okay, so a +3 and a -9 makes -6. +3, these 3 negatives, zero those out, and we're left with 6 negatives. All right, there's 2 more like this. -5 minus -6. Okay, again, as soon as you see that minus negative becomes plus. All right, once you've done that, then you can examine what 2 numbers you're combining. Okay, we're combining a -5 and a +6. All right, a -5 means I need 5 reds, okay, for my -5, and then I need 6 yellows for my +6. All right, there we go. And so we can see we have a lot of pairs that are going to zero out, and the only thing left is going to be this 1 yellow chip, which is a +1. So our answer is +1. All right, let's see. One more on this type. -1 plus 8. Again, -1 will be our first number, and +8 is what we're combining with that. So a -1 is a red chip. +8 would be 8 yellow chips. 2, 4, 6, 8. Let me get it up there. Okay. You see here we only have 1 pair that zero out, and then we're left with 7 yellow chips, and so our answer is +7. So if you notice on all of these examples that I've done so far, once we changed any minus negatives to pluses, we ended up with two numbers that had different signs, one positive, one negative. So here we had a -2 and a +6. Here we had a -7 and a +2, -4 and a +2, and so on. All these problems were examples where the signs were different. Okay, and so if you notice, when the signs are different, to get our answer, we're subtracting these 2 numbers and choosing the sign of the bigger number as the sign for the answer. So for a minute, just ignore the signs. 6 take away 2 is 4. Since 6 is bigger and it was positive, our answer is going to be positive. And if you think about that with the chips, it makes sense, okay? If your 6 is bigger, your positive number is bigger, you had more yellow chips. And so your answer is going to be yellow or positive. Okay, when you had more red chips, more negatives, then your answer is going to be negative. All right, and that works that way on all of these. So whichever one you had more of, if you have more positives, your answer is positive. If you have more negatives, your answer is negative. So here we had more positives in this one, so our answer is positive. Here We have more positives again because our answer is positive, but here we have more negatives, so our answer is negative. So when the signs are different for your two numbers that you're combining, you have different signs, you're going to subtract. Don't worry about the signs, just subtract the two numbers, and your answer will have the sign of the bigger number. Now again, when I say the bigger number, I'm talking about without signs, because here, -9 and 3. 3 is bigger than -9, but I'm not talking about with signs. I'm talking about if we had 3 of these and 9 of these, 3 positives and 9 negatives, then you had more negatives. How many more negatives did you have? You had 6 more negatives. Or here, if you had 5 negatives and 6 positives, then you had more positives. How many more positives did you have? You had 1 more positive than you did negatives. Or here, you have more positives than you did negatives. How many more positives did you have? You had 7 more positives than you did negatives. So that's essentially what we're doing there. All right, now what if we had some like this, like -5 minus 2. Again, I don't want you to worry about thinking of that as -5 minus 2. I want you to think of it as a -5 and a -2. Those are the two things we're combining. Well, in this case, we start to line up our -5, and then when we go to build the next number, we realize it's also negative. So all the chips will be red on this problem. -5, that's 5 reds. -2, that's 2 more reds. Nothing's going to zero out, so when we combine these, we get 7 reds, which is -7, okay? Or what if we have 3 minus -5? Again, minus a negative, we've got to remember to change that to plus. As soon as we see minus and negative, we'll change it to plus. Well, then we're looking at a +3 and a +5. All right, so those are going to all be built with yellow chips. +3 and then +5. Nothing's going to zero out, so we're going to have +8. Okay. All right, next, if we have -1 minus 7, again, I want you to think of that as -1 and -7. Well, if they're both negative, it's going to be all red chips. A -1, -7, all red chips, nothing cancels out. So we end up with -8. Okay. Or let's see, one more. Well, I say one more. Let's do 2 more. 1 minus -4. Again, when you see that minus negative, you're going to change it to plus. Then you're going to see that you have a +1 and a +4. This time, all the chips will be yellow because they're all positive. +1 and +4. +1 and +4 make +5. All right, and then -2 minus 4. Again, we're going to think of this as we're combining a -2 and a -4. -2 is red. -4 is also red. So we're going to end up with -6. So hopefully what you see here is when our numbers both have the same sign, nothing's going to cancel out. In fact, we have to add these together and keep that sign. If you have 5 negatives and then you have 2 more negatives, you're going to have 7 negatives. If you have 3 positives and 5 more positives, you're going to have 8 positives. If you have 2 negatives and then 4 more negatives, that's going to be 6 negatives. So the rule then, if your numbers have the same sign, which all of these did, the numbers we were combining either were both positive or both negative. So when you have the same sign, you're going to add the 2 numbers and keep the sign. So the answer will have the same sign as the 2 numbers that you're combining. If they're both negative, your answer is negative. If they're both positive, your answer is positive. So you're going to add and keep the sign. So you just want to think about it. Think about the chips. You know, if you have 5 red chips and 2 more red chips, you have 7 red chips. Or if you have 1 yellow chip and 4 more yellow chips, you have 5 yellow chips. So you're adding and keeping the sign. And those are our rules for adding and subtracting integers.